If you pop on over to Bob Hutchins' Swellcast, you already know that he is passionate about innovation, about change, about talking about human beings in the flow of change. And today we're going to drop into that with boldness, with curiosity, with a sense of collective breathing, because I think there's a lot of anxiety, and he's anticipating some of that because he's already written about that a lot. Bob is consulting with Fortune 500 companies who are freaking out. Not really, but they're getting consultants in to talk about what to do. He's worked with Disney and Warner Brothers and Sony and General Motors. He's been featured in Wall Street Journal and New York Times. Everybody wants to talk about this, and rightfully so. We want to be ahead of it. This sense of change and ChatGPT and AI. So today we're going to be gentle with ourselves, and we're going to look at the psychology of change and a collective anxiety that we are grappling with. Bob has a book about this. And be open to some optimism about things that some people are thinking are more doomsday-ish. Change is always hard. Technology is out there. They're always saying, AI is not going to take over. It's people who use AI. In fact, Bob, let's talk about your love of the human voice. That's the name of your podcast. And let's go right into voice itself. What do you love about voice? And do you have any fears that voice is going to be taken over by AI?
Well, Deborah, thank you so much for having me. And when we talk about our collective voice, our human voice, it is near and dear to me because I believe after having a 2-decade career in digital media and digital marketing, I've come to the reality that there are two paths that we can go down. And it's a couple of different attitudes that we can have when we think about new technology. And specifically AI, there is the path of positivity that this is a future that is bright. And there's a path that says this is the end of the world as we know it. This is the end of jobs as we know it. It's the end of discerning of what is true and not as we know it. And I believe that both of those things are true in the short term. But let me pose a edge of the coin position on this in a way of thinking. When you look at two sides, there's actually three sides of a coin. There's heads, there's tails, and there's the edge. And that's a path that we often forget because we get stuck in binary thinking, which is part of being human. But as Marshall McLuhan, the great media theorist, taught many, many years ago, as he was examining the changing world of media, he said that all media and all technology, for that matter, is an extension of who we are as human beings. The wheel was an extension of our ability to move and travel. The radio was the extension of our voice and the ability to tell stories to groups. Tools that we use to build things are extensions of our arms and our hands. And we get to the information age, and computers are extensions of our brains and our computing ability. And on it goes. You can apply this to any new technology. It's an extension, it's a betterment, it's a way to enhance what we're doing and multiply it. And so as I think deeply about the internet and this symbiotic connected world that we're all a part of, I have to ask myself, what is it an extension of? I would say that it's an extension of our nervous systems. Because what we've learned through the pandemic, and now that we're kind of almost on the other side of it, is we came through, but we also had a symbiotic relationship in pain and struggle and loss. In my TED Talk, I talk about this idea that we collectively felt everything at the same time. And we wondered why we were having trouble sleeping and were exhausted and were just depressed in ways. And we looked at the obvious. We were shut up. Inside homes. We were going through quarantine. But there was a deeper sense of something that was going on, and that was we were mourning the way things used to be, that the world had changed in so many ways. And we weren't going through it individually, but we were also simultaneously going through it together, experiencing it through videos and audio and the things that we were viewing, and the deaths and the sickness, and that the way things were changing. And yet through it all, there was this glimmer of hope that Viktor Frankl calls tragic optimism in the midst of extreme struggle and pain and trauma. And so we came out the other side, changed, giving to nonprofits is higher than it's ever been. We saw kindness being showed. Simultaneously all still wondering what was going on with us and why were we still struggling in so many ways, and mental health being brought to the forefront and being talked about, but also being a real struggle. So I'll continue that here, my thought in a second. So as we are now going through a whole new change and awareness of war in the Ukraine, and a new political issues that we're dealing with, what's fake news, what's not, who's in control, all of these things, we're now faced with this thing called artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. And it is by far, in my opinion, probably going to be the biggest impact on the world since the internet in so many different ways. And so I'm going to sum all of that up and answer your question about our human voice in this. After all I've just said and set the groundwork for this, there's another truth and a law of media as we think about technology. Just as it is an extension of ourselves, it also makes certain things obsolete, i.e. people's jobs, i.e. writers, i.e. so many things that AI will, designers. But there's another law, there's many laws of new technology and media, and another one is that it pulls back into popularity things that were previously obsolete. And I've talked about this and written about this too, is that new technology has a way of bringing things back. So for instance, streaming audio brought back vinyl records. Why? Because people realized that we needed to have that tactile audio analog experience. Podcasting and this medium right here is bringing back long form radio, old school interview format where people sat around radios in the evenings and listened to long form discussions and comedy and interviews. That's what podcasting has brought back. When you think of ChatGPT and AI, what could it possibly bring back? Maybe the spoken word, maybe we'll be able to orate better because tests will be given orally. Maybe the written word, maybe typewriters, maybe pen and paper will make a boom back again. Maybe handcrafted goods that only humans can create. There are many things. So as I look at that, here's where I want to land, and I want to hear from people, and maybe, Deborah, you have some more questions. Maybe AI and this technology is the next evolution of who we are, and actually is going to bring us back again to remind us of those human qualities that are uniquely ours. because the more that we learn about animals, the more that we learn about the microscopic world, things in the ocean, the more we learn about plants and trees, we're not learning how dumber or smarter we are. We're actually learning with every piece of knowledge how smart these other beings are that are all around us. And what it does is it reminds us that as human beings, we may not be the highest order of beings on the planet, but we actually might be a different order. And we're now discovering through this media, through these inventions, this technology, that quite possibly it's going to level the playing field once again, remind us what is really important, and force us to lean into the things that we may have forgotten or neglected, that make us truly human and make us one with other living things. So maybe that's why we fear it so much, is that we're actually trying to give it anthropomorphic qualities, as if it's going to become alive and do harm to us. But maybe subconsciously what we're doing is we're trying to claw out and reach out for an intelligence that's outside ourselves that we're so hungry for. Those are my thoughts.
I love your framing of this conversation. It's so exciting to be in a flow with you, because you obviously write and speak this, and it's your sandbox, and I'm so happy we're together. Two things popped out when I was listening. One is how moving it is when we all as a culture can quote Viktor Frankl, who, endured one of the most horrific aspects of human potential, which is evil, in the Holocaust. And his sense of tragic optimism ripples through generations, because there are people that survived who had incredible careers in spite of their beginnings. And it's relevant because I think that there's different periods of history that are impacted by different people in different ways. And there are some people who are without anything as we speak, earthquakes in Turkey and homelessness in Los Angeles and everything in between. And we look at technology as like, who cares if someone can't find water? So it's always a balance of looking at the human condition and also the potential of us to be incredibly brilliant with our next wheel or our next fire. And the idea of finding comfort in this conversation is the importance of the conversation, I think. The part that I feel is so relevant to the thread that you just started to needle into this interview is that kindness is a currency. And I think I titled this well, Kindness as a Currency, here in Swell. Talking about how infectious kindness can be no matter where we are. So, even if you're inside a restricted life, God forbid, a concentration camp or something like a refugee camp or a homeless encampment, kindness still lives there. The artificial intelligence has nothing to do with that world. Artificial intelligence gives us freedom to maybe spend more time in that world. Who knows? But I think because you are an industrial psychologist and you understand the state of mind when people are fearful of losing their positions, I think it merits a deeper look into that. So I'd love to talk about the psychology of adopting and embracing change when it in fact blows your life apart. And you want to be kind and open and you want to be optimistic. You don't want to shy away, but everything is telling you you're going to be obsolete. If you're a 45-year-old copywriter and you have 2 kids and a house, you're not so excited about ChatGPT. You can embrace it, but you can't ignore that you have to pivot so fast your head's going to spin off your body. So without being sort of pragmatic about what should that person do, that's one tact we could take, but I don't want to go there. I want to go to the higher level of consciousness around how generous can a person be whose life is going to be severely altered by technology, because it's different. The wheel helped everybody, but the car certainly didn't, because the people that made money with their horse and carriages had no business anymore. So we can look at patterns of change and how fast do people have to pivot, and what's their mental state when they have to pivot. So let's get really narrow here and talk about what you think the collective mantra could be for somebody and a group of people, a whole demographic of people who are feeling threatened by being replaced. And if they can't pivot in time, how did they find their grace and their kindness and their gratitude towards the brilliance of innovation when their lives are going to be smashed?
Great discussion here. So to answer your question, ChatGPT and AI creates the devaluation of certain skills that certainly threatens to push out many of the humans in their respective fields and crafts. And I believe this upheaval will be massive. And I've seen it several times in my own career where everyone is a digital expert or marketing strategist, only to be commoditized and have to move on to new professions. But I think there is a silver lining here that we can find. I think those with the highest level of expertise will quickly become some of the most valuable resources. And we only need to look back in history, because you mentioned it. You mentioned the automobile, and the advent of the automobile and its subsequent mass production essentially killed off blacksmiths and wagon makers and cobblers. But then as soon as cities became more congested and people needed to move faster than cars could, expert bicycle makers like Schwinn rose back up again, mastering their craft in a new form with a different level of expertise. So I think the message here is that true experts um, are going to rise up above the technology-induced mediocrity and commoditization every single time. So you ask, how is that? When all the jobs are being replaced by machines, why should I stay in a world where there are shrinking opportunities? I think the key to surviving and thriving, and as you said, having and grace and trying to find your way, is to be like Schwinn and slightly retool, connect the dots, innovate, lean into human soft skills, and embrace creativity, collaboration, communication, problem solving. These are things that machines still cannot match, and they're things that we deeply connect with and we desire. So I'm not saying going against the flow of technology, but embrace it, study it, use it. Look for the zig when everyone else is looking at the zag. Ask yourself, how does this new sea change adjust or manipulate our perception of things? Maybe I can be a flashlight or a guide. Maybe I can explore these cracks and crevices that are being developed. So it's time to take control of your future. Let your expertise be seen. Let your portfolio become a story of growth. Uh, Hone your skills, because it is coming. There will be an AI fueled commoditization, but also there's huge opportunities for the evident expert to rise. So that would be my advice. Think creatively, be pliable, don't be afraid to pivot, look for the zig when everyone else is looking for the zag.
Bob, I just want to pause here to reflect on your ability, which is, I think, exquisite, to hold space for the, like I said in the title, the messiness of the human psyche around this, what can be perceived as trauma. You have a beautiful, gentle way of guiding and of acknowledging and also providing some really clear directives that don't sound too difficult. They're expansive enough so that we don't get stuck in the weeds of how. I think we need the why before the how, right? Because the why gives us the passion, and then the how comes because we're feeling so emboldened and so infused with our own directive. So, of course, I want to drop into psychology now and specific to human resources departments that are filled with lots of people who've been sitting around pushing paper for a long time and are really being asked to be talent managers now. They're being called to say, how do we retain this group? And I'm sorry, we have to fire this group. And I feel like there needs to be a retraining of the human resources world to help ask for the budget to have internal trainings so that they don't have to let everybody go, and also to how to help people retool inside their positions at a rate that's effective and keeps them as being of value to the company. So that's the internal human resources world that I'm really fascinated with. And what are people doing about that? When you consult with these companies, what kind of questions are they asking you? And what kind of commitment are they making to help the people they've already invested in as employees? What are you seeing? Are you hopeful? Do they understand how difficult and traumatic it must be for people? We've seen a lot of layoffs. Can you help us see what's going on in your consultancies with these big companies that I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation? What's going on there? What are you hearing? What are you doing? And what are your observations about what's possible?
When it comes to companies and corporations and some of the work I do and advise on, I believe that larger companies, small companies, all companies should adopt a more holistic approach to their human resource management practices. And it's a quickly, vastly changing world. And the calls that I get and the questions that I often get are basically one of two questions. They fall into this category. How do I maintain company culture in a hybrid or remote environment? And number two, how do I manage and lead and guide people when I don't even know where they are, what they're doing? And both of those speak to a very old way of seeing the workforce, that an environment now has changed. And I think the third question that I often hear, it kind of falls in the first one, is how do I maintain and serve mental health and well-being in the workplace? So usually, let me put on my organizational psychologist hat and just give you some real clear 4 or 5 directives that I usually guide in. So number one, you need to emphasize skill development and retraining, and not just fire people and hire people with the skills, but actually things are starting to change, and I'm starting to see more and more companies emphasizing skill development and retraining. Because with technological advances, employees need to constantly upgrade their skills to stay relevant. This will not only increase employee productivity and job satisfaction, but it's going to ensure that the company has a workforce that's capable of meeting the challenges of the future. Secondly, is focus on employee well-being. We're all hearing about this well-being at work. It's crucial for both employee retention and company productivity. Large companies, corporations, and companies of any size for that matter, should provide a work environment that promotes physical and mental health. Healthcare, access to healthcare, wellness programs, flexible work schedules. Third, I would say prioritizing diversity and inclusion. Uh, Companies need to make this a priority, and there is a push for that. And
in general, I think large corporations recognize the importance of this, to actively seek out candidates from underrepresented groups, implementing training programs to prevent bias and create an inclusive work culture. But also, studies are showing that a diverse work environment raises creativity and production and output tremendously. Fourth, encourage internal mobility. Large corporations should encourage internal mobility, allowing employees to move within the organization, not only to develop their skills, but to pursue new opportunities. It creates a sense of career growth, but also helps a company retain their top talent. And we're seeing this more and more, specifically in millennials and Gen Z. They're looking for this. Fifth is develop a strategic workforce plan. Companies need to develop a plan that anticipates future workforce needs and the needs required and the ability to train for those needs. So that's just my organizational psychology hat and what I'm seeing in the workplace. Being proactive to human resource management that focuses on employees' well-being, their skill development, diversity, and workforce planning. So those are the things that I'm seeing out there. And also, I think we can also touch on, if you want, how management and leadership needs to shift in a hybrid or remote workplace. Because in a normal setting, you could walk into an office place and know and see what someone is doing. You can peek over their shoulder. You can see if they're at their desk. You can see with their body language if they're engaged, if they're not engaged. All of that's off the table in a remote and hybrid and work environment. So therefore, management has to shift from, I was going to finish my thought here. Management has to shift from managing for time, managing for attendance, managing for effort, managing for involvement and performance, and it has to shift to managing for outcome. And so this is the mind shift, especially in the younger generations, is if I do what you pay me to do and I deliver on the goals and the assignments, it doesn't matter if I'm here at my desk or if I'm traveling the world or if I'm on a train or if I get it done in a quarter of the time that it would take to be sitting at a desk 8 hours a day, as long as I'm delivering the assignment and the productivity of what you're paying me for, that's all that matters. That is a totally different management style and leadership that people have to think about in an environment where we're used to saying we all come in to a work environment, we leave our alternate lives behind us, and we enter into this realm of being that is called the workplace. And in that workplace, there are things that are appropriate, there are things that are not appropriate, there are things and ways of being and doing and working that everybody understands what those rules and that culture is. And then you leave, get in your car, and you leave that world behind. And then you enter into an alternate reality that is your personal life. And there are rules and themes and ways of being that we all understand what is appropriate and what is not. The pandemic changed that. It flipped it on its head and said, those spaces, those ways of being, those rules, they're all jumbled up into one big existence that we're trying to sort out where we fit, how we work, how we manage, how we lead, what is the workplace, what is not the workplace, what is productivity, what is not productivity. And so those are the questions that people are working with. And it's a real struggle specifically for older generations who have spent their work life and their work time in environments that were very specific to the way we've worked the past 125 years in this country and in Western civilization. To now say, okay, within a year to 2 years, everything is turned upside down. And then you add on top of that artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, um, social media constructs and ways of thinking and being, and the binary categories that we're all kind of thrust into. So psychologically, there is a lot of, quote, trauma. Um, and we can get into that if you want in the media trauma, the title of my latest book, which is Our Digital Soul, Collective Anxiety and Media Trauma and a Path Toward Recovery. So hopefully I didn't overdo it there with too much information and I answered your questions accurately.
That was really comprehensive. Thank you. I think it's so interesting to map all of this on top of, like you said, there's so many shifts and changes in remote work and disconnection from the human experience. But also, there was such a push, I think even before, way before COVID, to bring your whole self to work, which is really quite a big ask. I think it's nice to have separation for certain people. It's very scary to bring your whole self to work. But now we have to bring our whole self to work, plus our digital self, our avatars, all the other levels. But the psychology of not feeling stable, it's as old as anything. And I think leadership, like you say, is critical at this moment. And voices that are helping those leaders shape their message is really the role you're playing. And insofar as creating books like you are and talks like you have that kind of help people see that it's not a straight line, there's no manual, but there are ways to be curious and to learn how to lead in this new era that we're in. I don't think any time is an old time. Like, I think change is every day. So sometimes change is more magnified than other change is. I look forward to some more voices here. I just wanted to thank you again for Swellcasting in general. It's great to have your voice on this platform and your understanding of this time right now. You're a student as well as a teacher, obviously. That's the best kind of teacher. And I just look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you so, so much for this.